if you are looking at painting a subject matter on here, squint your eyes at your piece. If it's a kind of a light subject matter and you want to just quickly do a midground, it's going to have to be darker. I doubt trying to stick Mount McKinley in here is going to show up much on a white, on a, you know, it's the kind of peach, it's okay, it's not much of a statement. If you're looking for soft, this is called high key, when you have lots of whites and very little darks. Low key is where you start out on a black canvas and put a few other items and it's all mostly dark, but it's not like, so it's hard to convince people, ooh, it's a blue sky day with Mount McKinley if you're trying to stick Mount McKinley on a peachy kind of background. So to make a statement, I would suggest at this point, be aware of the whatever value area you currently are working in. What's there, you can choose to put a darker subject matter on a lighter background. So I'm just going for a gray kind of color. So what is gray? Purple and green and some white gives you a cool gray. You want to warm it up, you have a little orange, it's a warm gray. You want a little yellower, it's a yellow gray. Over here it's a pink. So gray is nothing more than a little bit of everything mixed together with a whole lot of white. Alrighty, we're a little bit dry. Okay, so grays, because they're off in the distance and we already have a gray painting, I can keep it harmoniously looking good. So if I said, oh, I want a series of hillsides, the further away they are, they're just a little bit of value. There's that range. Then the next range coming in is going to have a little more color. Be careful not to make your range follow the other range exactly. It needs to be a different shape. Hopefully the reference picture you have says so. And then the next layer of, come on, I stopped doing the green. It's going to be slightly warmer, maybe even greener since we've got possibly vegetation in it, and they'll be even closer. So they're going to be slightly warmer and slightly darker as they come towards you. Starting out mostly with the grays. I know the photograph shows a really dark color in the background, but it's not going to say background. If you get in there right off the back and say, but this is what I saw, that's okay for the foreground. That's the darkest of darks. It's going to come forward. So be aware of starting out with your background colors that dark in value. Alrighty. So when you do the subject matter that you have in hand, it's going to be darker in value. It's going to be slightly warmer, so you can sometimes stick some warm oranges into something. So even though it was a cool purpley gray, it might be a more of a reddish purpley gray. So you got your trees. Trying to think, what kind of trees do you want? Trees. Oh, Pacific Northwest Washington State trees called dinosaur teeth. If you take your brush and hold it on end and kind of pull it towards you but hit up and down, you can get the suggestion of trees without much effort. You guys,
Sticks.
you get sticks and pipe cleaners. There are a few that you have, you can see a little bit of those guys. And if there's something broken off, little bitty bits of pieces not even connected to the trees are okay, as opposed to line, mustache, mustache, mustache on the hair. So know your trees a little bit better than whatnot. Palm trees would not work well in front of Mount McKinley. I don't think you'll make much in the way of sales if you insist on putting, if the sunlight is hitting some trees that could have some reds, oranges and yellows to it, more so, and here's oranges, more so than oftentimes bright green. So depending on if the sun is hitting it from a sunny situation. Sunny on this side could be working its way towards cooler on that side, so depending on how your sunlight is hitting something. Trees, yes, you could do the, well, I just want to do a stick and I want to do the whatevers. You could do that. They have to be lighter in value at the top and slightly warmer because we're seeing more of the light and the trunk. Whereas if you have mostly green tree down below, green tree, okay, and purples mixed into those greens look pretty darn awesome. Most trees are not equal. They're not gonna be exactly the same on one side as the other, so don't try to make them go all the way up. Like if there's one up as big on this side, it's because there's probably one missing on that side and he compensated went that way. So be aware of making them odd. Gaps in between the rows of branches around here, or just be careful of just choosing and going with Kelly green. It's a lovely green, but it does not exist.
Right now, with the leaves that have just now come out, as you're driving and seeing the mountains, it's like black sticks out of the green, where the evergreens are.
How do you get around doing black sticks and
Yeah.
Evergreens, or
Well, you've
the
got
birch trees having all the black
the
sticks?
deciduous trees, and then you've got these spruce trees that are kind of
They're black.
blended in between, you know, they're in.
That blackness, if I can, I try to warm it up. Hang on a second, I'm trying to get it interesting colors to my green. Don't do the green things. There's the entire forest, okay. Most of the time, my way, there's so much undergrowth, it's always filled in below. So you can fudge and make, pointy tops and just fill in the whole bottom. You guys have a little more spaces in between. You guys do have that dark spruce that just looks like a black item. It can become too harsh. You as the artist need to neutralize it back. Make it an interesting grade version first. If it's your subject matter and it's very important to have the darks and the chunk values, then it gets to be as dark as you want it to be in the foreground, but it does not get to be a black stick in the background. So it's going to be just versions of grays further away, and then as it gets closer, you can add that intensity to your creature. When you're doing landscapes, the only thing that's truly important that goes into your landscape is where you want the eye to go. If you look at that whole hillside and you spend 20 days doing every black little stick on that hillside, and then you put a little tiny bear over here and you wonder why people look at the hillside and not your bear, don't leave the eye somewhere where you don't want it to go. Leave it simple. So right now, the darkest of darks is in here, our eye, this is what's going on. If you have a whole bunch of tree, I'm trying to get stuff in here quickly. You get more points for the less stuff you put on. Less stuff, reds, purples, oranges, especially in the wintertime or the fall when you guys have those blueberry bushes that you have chunks of reds tucked in everywhere that are awesome.
Yeah, they're fun.
Take your fingers, run them in there, rub those edges so that you have some looseness. This one's, quietly detailed, that those guys aren't. I do a little more blending. Soften up those edges where the shadows are. Okay, so we've got a suggestion of a hillside, and you said, well, I wanted to put the sunlight hitting right here in the foreground. So that means you're going to have interesting things that say, look at my foreground, because I've got the prettiest of colors, the most amount of colors, the smallest amount of detail, blah, 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 blah. Your eye is going to look there because that's where you've done all your noodling and all your work. If you've done all that noodling up here in the corner in your canvas and you're wondering why we aren't looking at the poppy field down here, it's because you've got too much going on. So less where you do not want the eye to look, more where you want the eye to look. Better color, more value change, more brush strokes, more busyness. That's what's going to happen when you have more. Less is going to be just supportive and suggestive, and the eye gets it that it's out there without saying, look at me. You want to keep the more within the 2 inches. It's like a 2-inch safety zone kind of around your canvas. That's the important area. Composition is what can kill a painting more so than anything else. So, hey, it's still green, but it's a grade green. It's not the look at me wild, I'm pretty green that's going on in here. So value change happened. We have a lot of lights. We have the brightest and prettiest of the colors there, and then I go find its complementary color and I neutralize that green and I make it say, I'm still green, but I'm way off here in the edges and I don't need you to look at me to say I'm green. There's just a subconscious suggestion that it's green because it's part of that one. When you get done with it, you go, hey, I got black ended, it didn't do something. You're going to have some darker values to work into the rest of this to keep your eye in that center area, not looking right at, or we have to take back that tree and say, you are not the center of attention. guys do fireweed. Ta-da, there's my fireweed. I had to work very hard to get it in there.
And what colors did you use?
So that was quinacridone magenta. But what you guys really, really need is help.
Uh-huh.
Yes, we know she needs help. Airplane proof, spell capitals, fluorescent magenta. If you're gonna do Mexico and have to do bougainvillea, or if you live in Alaska and have to do fireweed, you need flaming magenta.
Flaming magenta?
No, I'm sorry, fluorescent magenta. Flaming too.
We do.
You were gonna order more, I think.
Fireweed is pretty much the same thing as well. It's kind of literally just little bits of dinosaur teeth, just like the big guy was. There are going to be some darker values to say it's in shadow in some places, and we'll do a larger version of it. But pretty much, they're kind of sort of the same thing as the trees.
And lupin, and you would do it
Lupin,
the
you can use
same
blue.
way. Mhm.
Now here's a thing. You might, when you squint your eyes and you cannot see the difference between your subject matter and what's there. So I was doing this dark magenta over in here, it wasn't showing up. I had to add white to my magenta to get it to stand up on the darker surface, whereas it might not show up as well down here. You might need to darken something so that it becomes a dark on a light or a light on a dark. Those are important aspects of a painting. If you have medium on medium, when you squint your eyes, you can't tell one color from the other or the value or where you want the eye to go. So value change is important to lead the eye around, and color change. So generally speaking, loose, wet, grayed versions, anything from a warm, muddy gray to a cool gray to a green gray, are great suggestions of mid-range kind of a tree situation. Then as you work your way forward, you get to choose. If you were trying to desperately say, but the story is all about the sunrise and the sunset, then you're not going to be noodling your buns over here in the fireweed department, because that's not where you want the eye to go. So you might have to back off on it. Where you have to decide what the story is. What is your what? Focus on that. That's what you're going to make exciting and have multiple value changes on. So I'll pass that one around that way.